Good to see another brother around here.
Yes, of course it is. Something wrong?
Hi folks, I'm Ignatiy Vishnevetsky.
And I'm Alex Dowd.
Today we're talking about one of the best and most discussed movies of last year, Get Out.
Welcome to a very special Oscar edition of Film Club. So, horror movies almost never get nominated for Best Picture. Silence of the Lambs, Jaws, The Exorcist, The Sixth Sense. Basically, these movies that have to be these enormous phenomenons, I think, in order to sort of break through that genre glass ceiling. But this year, Get Out joins that club.
Even more unusually, it's a low-budget horror film.
Yes, yeah. Blumhouse, I believe, the sort of current masters of low-budget horror. The reason that we're talking about this movie as an Oscar film is that it was a phenomenon. Somehow, we're just now getting to it at Film Club. We did not discuss it at all last year. It is the directorial debut, somewhat amazingly, of Jordan Peele, the comedian formerly of Key and Peele.
And someone who, in his comedy, has always shown a great sense for imitation and pastiche. So it's sort of unsurprising that he slips very easily, very seamlessly into the role of a horror film director. I do have to say that I feel like it's a film that would be even stronger if it were scarier. One thing I do appreciate about it, among many other things, is that it's a pretty weird movie. I think it sort of revels in this strangeness that you don't really see a lot in horror films past about the 1970s. And all of these weird touches, I think, add to it. Because if it was just one very straightforward allegory or metaphor, I don't think the film would work as well. I think you have to complicate it. You have this character played by Daniel Kaluuya, who got a very deserved Best Actor nomination, one that was considered quite unlikely. I mean, he was kind of like a critic's darling, but the same thing with the film. Going to visit his girlfriend's parents. He's black, she's white. There is something very sinister going on where they live. I think it's the fact that it has these eccentricities and idiosyncratic touches, and the fact that, though it isn't a comedy, there's a lot of very odd humor to it from the very beginning.
Peele's background in comedy, I think, sort of naturally seeps into this thing. There is comedy. I actually think one of the weaker aspects is there's a supporting character who just sort of interjects occasionally with comic relief, which I feel like this is definitely a situation where giving us any reprieve from this weekend from hell is sort of a misstep. But I think what's really interesting about this movie is so much of it a lot of it does play like a sort of social nightmare. You know, he's put in this situation, and the conflict is kind of, there's something strange going on here. Or is my danger sense just completely thrown off by the fact that I have to spend an entire weekend basically placating these racists? You know, it's definitely, it's a movie of ideas, I think. It's definitely a horror movie with some big ideas about the sort of insidiousness of racism in America.
Yeah, because it's not like her family are members of the KKK.
No, that's the thing. It's about how racism survives in supposedly enlightened communities, in communities where people consider themselves above. Yeah,
they're very outwardly liberal,
right?
Which somehow I think makes it even more discomfiting from the very beginning, from his arrival at their. Basically, it's a house in the woods.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that as a traditional sort of scare machine, it's not as effective as any number of other horror movies. I think the moments when it's being a conventional horror movie are not as effective, at least from a basic formal standpoint. But I mean, fear is subjective, and this is definitely getting into some deeper anxieties and fears than something jumping out of the dark at you.
Wait. Mine is a terrible thing to waste. Terrible thing to waste.